The dark side of desire, what women really feel. Have you ever wondered why some women are willing to give up everything, their children, their families, their honor, even the lives they've spent years building, in just a fleeting moment? It's not because they're weak or impulsive. It comes from something far older, a primal instinct, a hidden current that runs deep within the female soul. A force so powerful that logic, love, and responsibility all fade into the background when it awakens. The legendary psychologist Carl Jung once spoke of a phenomenon that left even scientists speechless. He believed that inside every woman exists an ancient current of energy, shaped by thousands of years of evolution. It doesn't obey logic, morality, or social codes. It follows the raw, original laws of survival. That's why a woman can love you completely today, with tenderness, loyalty, and devotion, and still walk away tomorrow without looking back once that instinct is triggered. It's also why even the most intelligent, successful women sometimes choose the most dangerous paths. They fall for the man who hurts them, and grow distant from the one who truly loves and cares for them. Jung called this the deepest secret of the feminine nature. A biological program, written into DNA, designed for one ultimate purpose: to preserve and select the strongest form of life. Once you understand this, the way you see women, and love itself, will never be the same again. In his deepest studies of classical psychology, Jung discovered that this instinct isn't just an emotion. It's an unconscious program, silently guiding every action, every choice a woman makes. It pulls her toward signals of strength, protection, and vitality, not toward sweet words or material safety. What's terrifying is that this instinct doesn't care about modern values, compatibility, mutual respect, or long-term happiness. It still operates on the ancient genetic code, the same one that once decided who survived in the wild. And in today's world, where women are educated, free, and independent, that instinct still whispers beneath it all. She may believe she's searching for lasting love, for kindness, for stability. But deep inside, another voice murmurs, choose the one who can make your bloodline stronger. It's not her fault. It's part of the evolutionary legacy of humankind. And once you see that, you'll realize what seems like contradiction in women's choices is, in fact, nature's purest honesty. Something strange happens when a woman's primal instinct awakens. Every value she once believed in begins to blur. What reason built over years can dissolve in seconds. When a mysterious attraction rises from somewhere she cannot name, she finds herself drawn into the orbit of the very men she once swore to avoid. Their arrogance, something her mind once warned her about, suddenly feels protective. Their mystery, once unsettling, now makes her feel more alive than ever. A spirit of adventure, even recklessness, can make her heart race in an instant. While steady, reliable men slowly fade into the background. This isn't a betrayal of logic, it's a biological reaction, wired deep into her being, operating far beyond conscious thought. Women who've experienced this state often describe the same feeling. I became someone else. I don't even know why I did it. They make choices against their own nature, ignore advice from friends, and sometimes lose everything they once believed their lives were built upon. Not because they're blind or weak, but because they're moving through a biological transformation, a natural phase that emerges during certain pivotal moments in life. When hormones shift, when crisis hits, or when something shakes the very core of their inner world. Carl Jung called this the inversion of the feminine instinct, a revolutionary discovery in psychology. He realized that this force doesn't need love to operate. A woman can be deeply in love, remembering every detail of his eyes, his voice, and yet feel an overwhelming pull toward someone entirely different. And that's where the inner war begins. Deep down, that instinct acts like a genetic command, urging her to seek the strongest genes, the one who can pass on life most capable of surviving. It's not an act of betrayal, but a form of loyalty to the oldest rule of all, the law of survival. And here lies Jung's most shocking insight. That instinct doesn't understand romantic love. It doesn't care about emotional harmony, understanding, or lifelong commitment. It operates through algorithms written tens of thousands of years ago, when humans lived in the wilderness, and only strength, protection, and daring could ensure survival. Even in our modern age, where we worship logic and call it evolution, that ancient code still runs in the background. A woman may say she wants kindness, stability, a safe home. And she may genuinely believe it and live by it most of the time. But when that primal instinct awakens, the mind's programming fades to the back. She becomes drawn to deeper, irrational signals. Arrogant confidence makes her feel safe. Unpredictability excites her more than certainty. Risk awakens in her a feeling of being alive that stability never could. Here's the natural American English translation of your new section, written with the tone, rhythm, and emotional intensity of a deep-voiced psychological narration, as if from a storytelling channel like the School of Life or Philosophies for Life. The call beneath her skin, the moment instinct takes over. These things don't live within the realm of willpower. They are the echoes of millions of years of evolution, still humming in the blood and flesh of every human being. And so, when that instinct awakens, she no longer acts according to ordinary logic. She begins to make decisions that no one, not even she herself, can fully understand. But this isn't weakness. And it isn't a mistake. It's the primal nature of womanhood, a secret mechanism Jung once called the hidden face of choice. A force capable of erasing years of devotion in a single moment of instinct. Carl Jung documented hundreds of strange cases. Women who seemed perfectly stable in loving relationships, yet suddenly walked away after just one meeting with a man they'd never known before. One glance. One brief conversation. And something inside them flipped upside down. Jung discovered that, deep in the subconscious, there exists an ancient biological command line powerful enough to override morality, responsibility, and even love itself. When that reaction is triggered, the woman isn't truly deciding. Her rational mind will search for reasons, excuses that make sense. But in truth, the choice was made somewhere far beyond her control. What shocked Jung wasn't just the power of this instinct. It was how completely it rewrites a woman's perception of reality. The very same act can take on two opposite meanings, depending on whether her instinct has been awakened or not. The harshness or aggression of a man she's not drawn to makes her recoil in fear. But from the man who stirs her primal instinct, that same aggression feels protective, even safe. The silence and distance of a longtime partner can wound her deeply. Yet when that same silence comes from the man who triggers her biology, it becomes mystery, attraction, fire. According to Jung, resisting this instinct is almost hopeless. It doesn't live in the mind. It hijacks the entire reward system of the human brain. When a woman encounters a man whose traits match her ancient genetic pattern, her brain floods with dopamine, norepinephrine, and adrenaline. The same chemicals that appear when we're hungry, desperate, or fighting to survive. These reactions aren't chosen. They happen to her, sweeping through her like a storm that washes away all plans and logic. That's why the usual advice about love: choose the one who treats you well. Be logical. Make a list of pros and cons. Becomes meaningless once that ancient switch is flipped. Because this biological program was never made for reason. It was made to silence reason. In the primitive world, where survival mattered more than happiness, this instinct wasn't a flaw. It was a biological weapon, ensuring that only the strongest bloodlines would live on. And if that meant destroying a peaceful life, nature would still do it, without hesitation. Jung never saw this as an accusation against women. He saw it as a truth that demanded understanding. He believed that recognizing this instinct doesn't make women predictable. It reveals the immense power that lies sleeping within them. A force that has shaped the destiny of humankind for thousands of years. But Jung's most shocking discovery was this: the instinct doesn't need love to function. A woman can still love, deeply, tenderly, sincerely. and yet feel herself drawn toward another man. One who touches the instinctive depths she never knew she had. Love is a conscious process. It grows slowly, through time, through memory, through gratitude. Instinct is different. It doesn't grow. It strikes, like a wave crashing through everything in its path. It doesn't kill love. It simply surpasses it. That's why a woman can both love and leave. She can still remember every promise, every memory. Still know that the man she's leaving is the best one for her. And yet, deep within, there's a voice that will not be silenced. Follow the pull. Even if it destroys everything. And that's when the true inner war begins. A brutal clash between biology and will. Between instinct and loyalty. Between what she wants and what nature demands. Inside her, two voices fight for control. One is soft, reminding her of love, safety, everything they built together. The other is wild, fierce, calling her into the fire of desire. Beyond logic, beyond consequence. To the outside world, it looks cold. Even cruel. But to her, it isn't a choice. It's nature taking the wheel. A storm of hormones replacing the gentle oxytocin of love. With the burning adrenaline of instinct. And in that moment, when love is overtaken by something older, deeper, Jung called it the moment a woman returns to her ancient origin. Can you imagine it? A chemical storm raging inside her. A silent hurricane strong enough to tear down reason, faith, and every wall she's spent a lifetime building. It doesn't just stir emotion. It rewires the mind itself. As if someone has secretly rewritten the software of her soul. When the switch flips, it doesn't just make her heart race. It reshapes her entire world. Once that primal switch is flipped, her reality doesn't simply shift. It's pulled into a completely different orbit. What once felt familiar now feels foreign. What once was solid now turns to sand. Her thoughts scatter like wind after a storm. Her heart pounds. Her breath quickens. Her body sharpens, alive, alert. As if she's living in another dimension where every detail is brighter, every emotion louder. Colors deepen. Sounds grow sharper. And the man who accidentally triggered it all becomes the center of her universe. While the rest of the world fades like a half-erased painting. Because this storm doesn't creep in quietly, it strikes like lightning. It often leaves destruction in its wake. Love, with its slow-burning patience, cannot compete with this electric surge of instinct. It doesn't knock before entering. It doesn't wait until she's ready. It only needs one fleeting moment. A glance. A casual touch. A simple word that would mean nothing to anyone else. But inside her mind, it rings like a bell awakening something ancient. Sometimes, it doesn't even need words. The way he walks, calm, confident, untouched by the gaze of others, can be enough to set off the chain reaction. And in that instant, a chemical storm erupts inside her. Dopamine floods her brain, bringing waves of reward and excitement. Norepinephrine spikes her heartbeat and sharpens her focus. Adrenaline burns through her body, silencing reason. Her mind begins to narrow, collapsing until there's only one focal point. Him. Everything else, her work, her family, even those she loves most, begins to blur and drift away. And once that ancient instinct has chosen its target, reason doesn't just surrender, it's defeated. A woman who once lived carefully, weighing every decision, suddenly becomes willing to throw it all away. Her home, her reputation, the years she built with blood and tears. For a man she barely knows. This isn't ordinary betrayal. It isn't cheap infidelity. It's a biological program. Written so deeply that it can override decades of discipline in just a few hours. Carl Jung described this as a survival switch. And once it's flipped, no logic can turn it off. A woman may have spent half her life being thoughtful, doing what's right, choosing safety. But when that storm rises, every wall of reason collapses. Fast, sudden, and violent. Like thunder from a clear sky. Her brain begins to reorganize its priorities. That man becomes the absolute center. Work, once her pride, now feels like a burden. The future she planned so carefully now feels too small. Her home, once her haven, now feels like a cage. And she longs to escape it at any cost. From that moment on, she views the world through a single lens. Does this bring me closer to what I crave, or keep me from it? Anything that feeds the desire glows like fire. Everything that stands in its way, responsibility, advice, consequence, fades into static noise. But perhaps the most terrifying part is this. The storm doesn't just change how she sees the world. It changes how she sees herself. Promises that once felt sacred now feel like chains. Commitments that once gave her pride now feel like weight. She isn't betraying because she wants to. She's following a call older than morality itself. A whisper buried deep in the unconscious, pulling her toward what instinct declares right, even if it destroys everything in its path. The life she built so carefully, the world she once called her own, suddenly feels foreign, as if someone swapped her reality for a script she never agreed to. Her closest friends, the ones who once knew her soul, now feel like strangers, as if they're trying to pull her back into a dream she's already awakened from. Her family, once her refuge, now feels suffocating, like invisible walls holding her back from what she believes is destiny. Nature, somehow, doesn't just pull her toward a new man. It does something far subtler. It dims the value of everything that competes with him. This isn't just a change in attention. It's a restructuring of her inner world. An emotional earthquake she can't even see happening. And the scariest part? It all unfolds in complete silence. No warning. No inner voice saying, "This is just biology." She truly believes she's acting on free will. She believes she's waking up. That she's finally removing the mask. Finally living in alignment with her deepest desires. She believes everything before this was an illusion. And only now, she's truly alive. And because that belief feels realer than reality itself, her emotions become absolute, pure, undeniable. They don't feel imposed or manipulated. They feel authentic, as if they were born from the deepest part of her being. A place where reason has no authority. In a quiet, almost flawless way, this ancient instinct begins to rewrite her entire system of priorities. Things that once mattered now feel small. Things that once frightened her now seem irresistibly alluring. And the choices she once labeled as mistakes now take the shape of freedom. In her eyes, everything starts to make sense. She feels as if she's finally lifted a veil that had been covering her mind for years. Every action, every decision carries an uncanny certainty, as if she's finally seeing the real life she was always meant to live. But it's only an illusion. It isn't freedom. It's an ancient genetic code running its course, cold, precise, and merciless. Carl Jung once called this phenomenon emotional reframing, meaning her feelings shift not because the world has changed, but because her inner lens has been rewritten. Everything outside remains the same. The house is still the same house. The man is still the one who once made her heart race. Her friends are still the familiar faces who shared countless memories. Only her emotions, the one thing that defines how she sees the world, have been completely overturned. What once made her feel warm now makes her suffocate. What once felt like shelter now feels like a cage. The love that once gave her life now feels like an invisible rope tightening around her neck. And in that moment, a single decision, a small turn, can alter the entire trajectory of her life. The relationship that once gave her peace suddenly feels hollow, as if someone quietly drained its soul. The man who once was her anchor, who made her feel loved, understood, protected, now stands as a symbol of confinement. He hasn't changed, but her perception of him has. The irony is, this shift didn't come from reason. There was no long night of reflection, no list of pros and cons, no carefully drawn plan. It all happened quietly, deep within her brain, beneath the level of consciousness where reason has no power. And that's what makes it so dangerous. Because when this instinct awakens, it doesn't just distort emotions, it rewrites memory itself. Moments of happiness from the past suddenly fade. Tiny mistakes once forgiven now grow into wounds that never heal. She begins to look back at everything, not through truth, but through a newly programmed lens designed to prove she has always been trapped. A single harmless comment from years ago is suddenly pulled out of memory and turned into proof. Proof that she was deceived. That her life has been a lie. The tiny scratches once forgotten now swell into scars that never close. As if the entire relationship had been a mistake from the start. Meanwhile, the beautiful memories. The quiet mornings over coffee. The hugs after long days. The laughter that once felt endless. Begin to fade, dissolving like ink in water. Her world dims where it used to be warm. And lights up in the places that once felt dangerous. The new man, with his eyes, his voice, his stillness wrapped in arrogance, shines like a flame in the night. And she, like a moth to the fire, begins to orbit around him. The frightening part is, this change doesn't stop at memory. It narrows her attention, turning her whole perception into a lens that focuses on one single point. If once she cherished kindness, trust, and stability, now her mind seems reprogrammed to seek something entirely different. Confidence, danger, and unpredictability. The very qualities that once defined happiness are now pushed aside. The warning signs she once recognized so easily are now excused with poetic justifications. He's just deeper than most men. He's mysterious, that's what makes him magnetic. And while she's busy glorifying this new man, she unconsciously punishes the one who's been by her side. Small mistakes become unforgivable sins. Ordinary habits turn into evidence of indifference. Yet, none of this comes from intentional betrayal. It isn't deceit. It's nature, quietly adjusting the lens through which she sees the world. It amplifies everything that draws her toward a new genetic target, and blurs everything that might pull her back into her old safety. Cruelly enough, from her perspective, everything feels absolutely real. She feels awake, clear, alive. As if, after years of blindness, she's finally opened her eyes to the truth. Jung once noted that women in this state often say things like, "For the first time, I feel truly alive. I've finally found my real self." But Jung understood. This isn't the awakening of the soul. It's an ancient instinct disguised as enlightenment. It doesn't control her from the outside. It speaks in her own voice. It makes her believe this is her free will. She doesn't realize that the one holding the reins isn't reason, but an evolutionary inheritance whispering through her blood. And the true power of this pull only reveals itself when she tries to resist. She knows very well this man could hurt her. She sees the instability, recognizes the warning signs. And still, she can't stop thinking about him. She replays every moment in her mind. A fleeting glance. A vague smile. A half-finished sentence. And each tiny detail turns, within her, into destiny. She starts finding meaning in every coincidence, convincing herself that these are signs of a deep connection. She justifies his flaws, excuses his coldness, and defends him even against those who have always loved her. She creates accidental encounters, builds reasons that seem random just to see him. And even when she swears she's moved on, instinct pulls her back, stronger than before. This isn't weakness. It isn't naivety. It's a civil war between two brains. The rational brain of the modern human, and the primitive brain of the ancestors, where survival instinct reigns. And in that war, the primitive brain almost always wins. Because it doesn't speak in words. It speaks in heartbeat and breath. In dopamine, adrenaline, and primal longing. It's older than morality. It existed long before society defined what's right or wrong. And it's stronger than love. Because love takes time to grow, while instinct only needs a spark. That's why women sometimes fall for dangerous, unstable, even cruel men, while remaining indifferent to those who love them with gentleness and devotion. Jung called this the instinctual key effect, a cluster of unconscious signals that can awaken her entire biological system. It's not about perfect looks. It's about the sense of power and self-command, the very traits that once meant survival back when humans still hunted to live. In that moment, her body isn't thinking about bank accounts, future plans, or anniversaries. It's answering a call from tens of thousands of years ago. A whisper saying, "This man can lead. This man can protect. This man can give your bloodline a chance to survive." There are things in the world of emotion that aren't choices, they're inevitabilities. To her, that attraction isn't just desire. It feels like an invisible current running beneath her skin, making reason completely useless. It's not because he's more handsome, stronger, or more perfect. It's because there's something ancient in him, an echo from humanity's dawn, something her body recognizes as, "This is a man who can survive." It's an energy that doesn't need to be spoken, a presence that shifts the air in a room the moment he walks in. It's not about appearance, but about the field of self-possession. That subtle gravity making others instinctively want to trust or follow him. That is the signal nature has encoded into the human mind over thousands of years of evolution. And then, there's one element that triggers this response, more powerfully than anything else: emotional coldness. Ironically, what many men see as a flaw is what her biology interprets as a sign of high value. She doesn't feel it as indifference or cruelty. In the language of the unconscious, it means he has options. He isn't ruled by desire. He doesn't need her to feel whole. In her subconscious, those signals decode as strong genes, proof that this man can choose, rather than beg. And from there, a war begins. A war between biology and reason. Her friends, her family, even she herself can see the danger. They warn her, list the risks, try to pull her back with logic. But their words only reach the surface, while the real decision is made somewhere deeper, where language holds no power. Reason speaks in words. Biology speaks in impulses. And when the two collide, biology almost always wins. This program has existed since humans ran from predators. It was built for speed and reaction, not for reflection or philosophy. In the primal world, hesitation meant death. And so, when this instinct awakens, it turns mate selection into a matter of survival. At that moment, the part of her brain responsible for logic and planning, the prefrontal cortex, temporarily shuts down. Not because it's broken, but because nature wants her to act, not to analyze. This isn't a flaw of evolution. It's evolution working perfectly. Biological attraction floods the brain like a storm of chemicals. Dopamine narrows her entire world until there's only one center, him. Norepinephrine ignites her emotions, turning every glance, every gesture into a lightning strike aimed straight at her mind. Together, these two chemicals reprogram her perception. Logic fades. Advice becomes background noise. And the heart becomes convinced it has found the one. She may know reason is right. She may remember every argument against him. But her body doesn't listen. She's caught in a war between knowledge and instinct. And as always, instinct wins. Knowledge moves slowly. It needs data, time, reasoning. Emotion strikes like thunder. Faster, stronger, and by the time logic finds its voice, the battle is already over. That's why outsiders always feel powerless. They're angry, frustrated, desperate to save her. But they're using logic to fight nature, a tool that cannot reach the depths where these decisions are made. And there's a cold truth hidden beneath it all. Understanding why reason fails is the first step toward true wisdom. Only when you see that this isn't a moment of weakness, but an ancient survival algorithm. Can you face it with awareness instead of fear? Because once you look directly at it, not to fight it, but to understand it, you begin to master yourself. You stop blaming yourself for not being good enough. You stop feeling lost in the storm of desire. You begin to see the mechanism behind every choice. The flawless biological machine that nature built inside you. And from that awareness, you learn how to move through it. Not by resistance, but by consciousness. You don't destroy the wind. You learn to move with it. You don't deny instinct. You learn how it works, so it no longer controls you. Because this was never just her story. It's the story of human nature. A force older than love, older than morality, older than faith. You can judge it. You can fear it. You can even hate it. But you cannot pretend it doesn't exist. Once you've seen it, you start to recognize its traces everywhere. In the way her eyes shift when she looks at another man. In the change of tone in her voice when he enters the room. In the way she rewrites the past to justify the present. But the purpose of awareness isn't judgment. It's awakening. The man who understands this power is no longer its victim. He stops begging the wind to blow his way. He stops fearing the loss of what he could never own. He becomes the storm. He stands firm where others collapse. He holds his ground when the current pulls back. And in that moment, the balance changes. He no longer fears her leaving. Because he no longer fears being left. He no longer fears her desire. Because he has touched his own power. That is when the game ends. Not when she chooses him, but when he chooses himself. And perhaps that was Jung's final message to the world. Freedom isn't about controlling others. It's about mastering the only kingdom you will ever truly rule. Your own mind. So when the storm comes, don't run from it. Step into it. Not as a beggar, but as a king.